Alright guys, so today I'm talking. What's going on guys? So I'm getting back on the engine build. So we're just going to continue adding stuff to the short block. Cylinder heads are still a ways away, but can definitely continue building the short block for now. Up to this point, I have the camshaft installed and I have the timing set halfway installed. I'll show you guys what I'm talking about right now. I'll rip this timing cover off and I'll show you guys what's going on. Give me 1 second. So, like I said, the timing set's just on there sort of haphazardly. This is an adjustable billet timing set from Speedway Motors. And right now I have the crank gear set at 0, so dot facing up, and then I have the cam gear with no advance in the bushing on top. So all I'm going to do is replace these bolts right here with the actual ARP bolts, crank it down. This should be, I think, 18 or 22 foot-pounds. I'll get the paperwork right now and get those final installed in 1 second. All I'm installing here are these ARP cam gear bolts. You honestly don't need to go this overkill on the hardware with these, but they're actually cheaper than buying OEM replacement bolts, so I'm sending it. Alright, instructions say lubricate the bolt threads and underside of the bolt head with ARP Ultra Torque Fastener Assembly Lubricant. And it says 25 foot-pounds. See if you guys can read that. I think you can. So, 25 foot-pounds, and I go get some ARP lube. I don't think it's the most critical thing in the world to lube these up, being that they're a relatively small fastener. Okay, that's where one bolt goes. Take these only 2 placeholders out. One sort of tech tip, and you guys might barely be able to see it, I'll pull it closer, but sort of a good way to indicate, when you're dealing with a Gen 3 style block, is the lack of tensioner holes, for at least guide holes in the actual block itself. So you should get what's on right now. You can see right there in the block there are no tensioner holes. Right here underneath the cam gear. Usually that's where you'd bolt a tensioner or a guide, depending on your block. But this one just doesn't have the provision for it, which is fine. Okay. All we'll do is run these guys down. $25 foot-pounds. Alright, 25 foot-pounds on the mark. Thought I ran them down. Oh, crank is turning. I didn't think it would. That one went. That one went. Got it. Okay. "25 foot-pounds all the way around." That's good. Okay. And now we'll move on to installing the oil pump. "10295 oil pump. You can see there the number. This is a high volume or high pressure standard volume oil pump. Feels kind of weird, honestly, but that's just how it is. It's got some sort of like odd dust on it. But what I am going to do before I install it is run a little bit of assembly lube in here, just to make me feel good. And then I'm just going to slide it onto the crank, throw the bolt in loosely, turn the crank over a few times, and then tighten this thing up. And you can kind of see the assembly lube. You probably can't see it on here. Let's see. Can you see it? Yeah, you can barely see the assembly lube sort of moving through the gear. So, I feel good about that. Yeah, you can definitely hear the suction of it picking up fluid. So, got that primed. Just got some real basic ICT billet, supposed to replace stock hardware. There's 4 bigger bolts. These are to actually install the oil pump itself. And then you get 1 small bolt, and that should be for your oil pump pickup tube. You can see that from the factory, this pump has 2 holes for the pickup tube. And whatever pickup we install, we're going to utilize both of those. That's kind of a Achilles heel from the factory that Chevy did, was all of their stock pickups, at least from the ones I've seen, only use 1 bolt. So that pickup tube will either get cocked and the O-ring won't seal and they won't get oil pressure, or over time it'll loosen up and then lose oil pressure that way. So that's how you can fix that. Just make sure you either get a girdle or you get a pickup tube that has 2 provisions for bolt holes, so that you can make sure it at least gets those 2 points of contact. Slide this guy on. It's pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. This flat side right here on the pump has to go where this hole is on the block. Picks up oil here, pumps it through the block through the galleries here. And all I'm going to do right now is I'm actually just going to brake clean this surface and make sure I get a good seal. Not best to do this with a microfiber rag, gets lint everywhere. Okay, that's relatively clean. Let's install this pump. These are a little weird since the gear that it's inside that actually moves the oil can float a little bit. That's kind of why it's a good idea to throw a little bit of thick assembly lube in there. That way you can put it on the crank and it won't be moving on you. So let's try it. She's fighting me. Come on now. There we go. that. You can tell the orientation is correct on this because, like I said, this hole here will match your block here. So the only one way it can go on. There's that. We'll loosely put the bolts in. So technically there's another way of doing this. Some people say you're supposed to take this cover off on the front, undo all these bolts, and then put shims between the gear itself on the housing, and that's another way to center it. Between me and all my friends, I don't think a single one of us has ever actually done that, and none of us has ever had like an oil pump failure due to that. At least not that I know of or can recollect. So the way I've done it and the way I've always been told to do it is just put it on, get the bolts hand tight, kind of loose. That way the pump can still move around as you're rotating the crankshaft, and center it up, and then torque it. Is there any right or wrong to that? I'm honestly not sure. I'm not really too concerned about it. So right now the bolts are seated, but I can definitely still move the pump housing itself. The bolts, from what I remember, you don't got to put anything on them. You can install those dry. You could put a light coat of oil if you really want to, but I'm going to install them dry. All I'm going to do is get a socket and a ratchet, rotate this crank probably about 3 times, see that it feels good, and just tighten it up. That's all I'm going to do. Just about lines up on top dead center here on the number 1 piston. Number 1 piston, top dead center, and the dot, you can kind of see it there. It's straight up and down with the crank. Got a few more cranks. Keep dropping stuff. Alright, feels good. This should also be 10mm. Let me actually go grab a spec sheet for this. We'll adjust accordingly. So, bring this thing down. 3 past 15 should be 18. Tighten up the lock nut. Hear your shoulder pop, so you know you're getting close. So I'm just going to kind of do this in a crisscross pattern. That's tight. That's tight. That's tight. That's tight. All right. We're good there. Rotate it 1 or 2 more times for good luck. Oh yeah, that feels buttery. Oh yeah, we're cooking. All right, so we've got the oil pump, timing set, cam is installed. I'll give you guys cam specs right now. Alright, so in case you guys are wondering, this is a Lunati cam, part number 2054, T as in Tom, B as in boy, S as in Sam 3, probably standing for 2054 Turbo Stage 3. This one I think is very similar actually to my Brian Tooley cam now that I look at it again. I'll have to go grab the other cam card and triple check. But here's the read off. We're looking at 0.608 intake lift, 0.610 exhaust lift at probably 50 thousandths. And we're looking at 230 intake, 235 exhaust duration at 50 thousandths lift. So that's a pretty healthy cam right there. Not a ton of lift, but a pretty chunky amount of duration, which for the 6 liter should sound pretty awesome. It's a 114 lobe separation angle, and we're looking at 285, 290 advertised duration for a Gen 3/4 V8 LS. So, pretty decent cam. Lunati had a great Black Friday sale, so I couldn't resist the urge to pick one up, knowing that I had to finish building out this 6 liter. So, it's going to be pretty good. Went and dug out the cam card for the 5.3 just to continue kind of what I was talking about. I was curious too. And Brian Tooley gives you a little bit more information. And the Brian Tooley Stage 2 turbo cam, and this is comparing to a Lunati Stage 3 turbo cam, we're looking at 610, 609. So more intake lift, less exhaust lift, so sort of flipped that way, where the Lunati is 608, 610. So that's different for sure. Then on the duration side, we're looking at 226, 231 at 50 thousandths. So 226, 231 is a little more tame because our Lunati is 230, 235 at 50 thousandths. So that gives you a pretty good idea of what the different lifts are and duration. So odds are the Lunati cam has very similar lift, if not less intake lift and more exhaust, so flip that way, but a little bit more duration, so it should sound more rowdy. And as far as LSA goes, we're looking at a 113 lobe separation angle, and on the Lunati we're looking at 114. So technically speaking, the Lunati is more aggressive as far as duration is, but the BTR Stage 2 is extremely similar. So it's interesting to see that. Different manufacturers, slightly different specs on the cams, and sort of how they go about naming them. Because theoretically speaking, they're pretty even on the playing field, but the naming is a little different. Not to say there's anything wrong, because the 5.3, I don't know if it would really even see a benefit for more duration. It would sound way cooler, I know that, because I think my buddy Nani, he has, I think it's like a 238, 240 something Magic Stick 3 cam, and that thing chops crazy. Like, just it sounds disgusting, and it's cool, you know? The lift is only, I think, 595,000, so less lift, but way more duration. So, not to turn this into like a tech tips video, but kind of, duration is sort of how long the valve stays open, how many degrees, and then the actual lift itself is at peak lift. So when the valve is all the way hung open, how much is it actually moving? So in this instance, we're looking at just almost 5/8 of an inch, 610 thousandths, versus 608 on the Lunati. So the lift is a lot, but the duration, how long the valve is open for, also helps. So that's kind of when you start talking about when the exhaust and intake lobes sort of overlap. That kind of explains where you get that nasty idle from, you know. So interesting to see. I figured I'd add that at the end of the video, just so you guys can see the difference in the cams. Not see, but hear me talk about them. How much it'll affect the 6 liter with the extra 0.7 liters of displacement, I'm honestly not sure. But I know that more liters means it's easier to make more power. So with the 5.3, if I had to guess, naturally aspirated, after we put the Brian Tooley cam in it, according to the numbers from calculators with the ET and how much I know the car weighs with me in it, we're probably making about 340, 350 horsepower to the tire. And, you know, I'm not going to say that's a small feat. That's huge, you know, for this thing to run 12.4 naturally aspirated, and I don't know what I'm doing. That's pretty impressive. But the 6 liter should make that easier. It should make that power easier and at a higher level naturally aspirated, therefore making boosted horsepower even easier, which is why I build these to be blow through or boosted applications. So it's going to be interesting to see. I really want to pull the 5.3 out and dyno that so I can have an A-B comparison, because I know that the 5.3 probably makes more power than I really think, because I know that when I'm on the drag strip I can't really give it everything due to traction. So someday I'll rip it out and I'll find out, or I'll put one on a chassis dyno, rip it out, put the other one in, and take it on a chassis dyno, because I would like to know. I don't really care what the number is. It's just, it's fun, you know? It's cool to see what you got. Alright, I'll let you guys off with that.